家下午好. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Yale Center Beijing, and especially to our speakers and guests, Emma, Yuval, Ma Jun 老师, Wang Binbin 老师, and Diao 女士. Welcome to the Yale Center Beijing, which is Yale University's home here in China. We were founded back in 2014 as almost like an embassy of Yale University here in China and an activity center representing all our 14 schools. Throughout the year, as some of you may know, we convene thought leaders such as the ones we have today on pressing issues facing our world. We have something going on every 2 to 3 days, and you're more than welcome to look at our social media accounts to follow our latest events. As many of you know, climate change is one of the most pressing and critical topics that all of us face around the world. So I think there can't be a more timely topic than today's, which is cooperating for climate, the view from China, where we'll discuss how China's experience can be a model and can be useful to the world in terms of climate action and environmental governance. And today I'm so delighted and honored to welcome back and welcome our esteemed speakers and moderator. Well, first of all, I want to thank our co-hosts, which are the International Leadership Center at Yale and the Institute of Carbon Neutrality at Peking University. The International Leadership Center is actually a place within the Jackson School of Global Affairs that house many leadership fellowship programs, including the prestigious Greenberg World Fellows program and the Emerging Climate Change Fellows program. I am honored and delighted to welcome Emma Skye back to Yale Center Beijing. She's to me, as well as to our many World Fellows and Yale faculty and students, one of the most inspiring figures in history to me. Emma is a founding director of Yale's International Leadership Center and a lecturer at Yale Jackson School of Global Affairs, where she teaches great power competition, cooperation, global affairs, grand strategy, and refugees, and Middle East politics. And I am missing the book from my room. If Peng Xiao can grab her 2 books from the room that I was going to show. She is the author of the highly acclaimed The Unraveling, High Hopes and Missed Opportunities in Iraq. 中文叫失去伊拉克. And it's because Ms. Skye spent a lot of her years in her career in the Middle East, including as a, how do I pronounce this role? Governorate coordinator of Kirkuk for the Coalition Provisional Authority in Iraq when the UK and the US were in Iraq in those days. Earlier in her career, Emma served as a political advisor to the commanding general of US forces in Iraq, as development advisor to the commander of NATO's International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan, as political advisor to the US Security Coordinator for the Middle East peace process. And there have been many other exceptional experiences and accolades. But to me, foremost, I think Emma is a peacemaker, and that's something that we all need more of today. I'm also honored and delighted to welcome World Fellows Ma Jun and Wang Binbin back to Yale Center Beijing. I know Emma will be giving a fuller introduction of all of our speakers today, but many of you know that Ms. Ma is a renowned environmentalist who has ignited critical conversations and changes across China as the director of the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs. Ms. Wang has become a great friend, and she is a celebrated climate activist and social scientist in China, and has played a crucial role in China's participation in international climate change conversations and summits. and she's now the Associate Dean and Research Professor of the Institute of Carbon Neutrality at Peking University. I'm also delighted to welcome Climate Fellow Zhouwei. Ms. Diao is currently the Network Strategy Execution Manager of BP Pulse, and she has had a decade of experience in the energy sector and is a Yale School of the Environment graduate. And of course, we have Yuval Ben David, a Yale College graduate like myself, but of a much later vintage, and also instrumental in the programs at the International Leadership Center. I'd also like to very quickly welcome some of our award recipients from our collaboration with Tyson Global, which is called the Smart Talks on Climate Change, where Ms. Ma and Ms. Wang have participated in previous years, where we're trying to groom the younger generation for climate action and climate communications across the world. And after this talk, we'll have a mini ceremony for them to get together and receive their award certificates. So without further ado, let's welcome Ms. Emma Scott.
Carol, thank you very much for that warm introduction. And it's a great honor to be back at Yale Center, Beijing. The first time I spoke here was on the 2nd of February, 2016. And I remember it well because it was my birthday. And at the end of my talk, everyone sang happy birthday to me. And I remember thinking, how lovely that is. So even on the other side of the world, far from my family and my friends, and with complete strangers, people were making the effort to make me feel special on my birthday. So it's a real pleasure to be back here because I have such fond memories of that time. So this is now my second ever visit to China. And last time I was here in 2016, I spoke about the Arab Spring and ISIS. Now, in case you're wondering whether you're in the right room or not, today I'm not going to speak about the Middle East. It's still a mess, unfortunately. But what we are here today for is to talk about climate action and getting to net zero. Our planet is warming at a dangerous rate. And if we don't act more effectively, Earth will become uninhabitable. Now, according to the IPCC, which is the definitive report on the science of climate change, to keep within the 1.5 degree centigrade limit, we need to reduce carbon emissions by 43% by 2030 and 60% by 2035. But global emissions are still rising. Emissions reached a record level last year, and I was struck to read that one of the reasons for this was exceptional droughts hit hydropower production, forcing more countries to turn to fossil fuels. So our global water crisis, which is inextricably linked to the consequences of climate change, is also hindering our response to climate change. We are in fact dealing with a full-blown planetary crisis in climate change, pollution, biodiversity. And I recently heard the term carbon tunnel. It was a new term to me. And carbon tunnel means a sort of tunnel vision where we focus on carbon dioxide when we should be thinking more broadly about all greenhouse gases, and on net zero to the exclusion of the environment, jobs, justice, equity. And so sometimes we need to reframe the issues to see the bigger picture. Climate change is such a complex issue and bundled up with so many dilemmas and trade-offs that sometimes it feels like too big a challenge, too daunting a challenge. the good that we see in one place, rapidly deploying solar panels or electric vehicles, might actually be contingent on harm caused elsewhere. Exploitative labor conditions in, for instance, cobalt mines in the Congo. And all this complexity can be paralyzing. And to top it off, climate change itself is not fair. The places that have contributed the least to global warming are facing the worst of its consequences. And many emerging economies are feeling rushed into an expensive, socially disruptive energy transition that hampers what they believe as their right to development. And often before people there even have basic energy access. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, can we prosper without doing irreparable damage to our planet? Now, it's not politically feasible to ask people living in rich countries to give up what they have. And it's not fair to ask people in poorer countries to sacrifice their development. So we need to think of how we power our lives with clean energy and how we feed ourselves in a more sustainable way on less land. If we do this right, it can also bring us the added benefits of less air pollution, and where better to see less air pollution than in Beijing, extraordinary improvements there, and can also bring us healthier diets. Now, humans have been burning things to generate energy ever since we lived in caves. But now there are new energy technologies that enable us to avoid high emissions and high pollution. In the last 5 years, low carbon technologies have become competitive or undercutting the cost of fossil fuels. The cost of solar, wind, and batteries have all come down. Nuclear power is the most efficient source of electricity, and it uses little land and is low carbon. We can ensure energy security by establishing more localized energy systems. We also need to change what we eat. Farming uses around 50% of the habitable land in the world. And we produce around double the calories that every individual human needs to consume each day. So there are massive losses in the supply chain and in waste. But also in that we feed a lot of those crops to animals who convert it to meat, and often in a very inefficient manner. And also using land to grow biofuels. Food production is the biggest driver of biodiversity loss. We cut down a lot of forests and use the land in order to raise cattle. Cattle ranching is the leading driver of deforestation globally. And cows are the greatest agricultural source of methane. If we don't change the way we eat, then emissions just from agriculture alone will take us over the 1.5 degrees. So there are technological solutions to address some problems, but others require behavioral and cultural change, which is more difficult. Some people don't want to stop eating those beef steaks. So the transition will require technological genius, radically unorthodox policy ideas, and creative solutions for financing the overhaul of entire systems. Now, when the US and China cooperate on climate, the global agenda advances. Chinese manufacturing, American innovation are essential for decarbonization at speed and scale. Now, ahead of the last climate summit, COP28 in Dubai, the American and Chinese climate envoys John Kerry, and Zhouwei Diao met in California, and they issued a statement noting their alarm at one of the greatest challenges of our time, which they committed to jointly resolve despite other differences. And enhancing their commitments under the Paris Agreement and committing to convene other countries around the issue of methane and non-CO2 gases, they set the stage for a successful summit in Dubai. And in fact, it was these two, Kerry and Xi, whose trust and friendship been going on for a long time, but that trust and friendship was what led a decade before to the groundwork for the Paris Agreement. And these two guys, they're two grandfathers. And what are they thinking about? They're thinking about leaving a better world for their grandchildren. And they set a positive example to all of us about cooperation. Chinese and American cooperation on climate action is essential for the world. Now, as Carol mentioned, I'm the founding director of Yale's International Leadership Center. And our mission is to develop and support innovative, effective, and adaptive leaders to address the most acute and complex challenges facing the world. And we work across climate, peace, and security. And we promote internationalism. International cooperation requires trust. And we can build trust by getting to know others. People-to-people encounters help to break down stereotypes and to counter mistrust, and can lead to collaboration and creative ways of addressing issues. So one of the initiatives in my center is the Yale World Fellows program. And each year, thousands of people from around the world apply to be a World Fellow, setting out their experiences, their expertise, and their vision for making the world a better place. And each year, 16 are selected based on their achievements, their character, and their dedication to being leaders of the good society. People who care about their communities, people who are dedicated to making a positive difference, people who are committed to helping address the challenges facing our world. And they get to spend a semester together at Yale. They get to know each other as people, what motivates each one of them, their fears, their hopes. And they build their norms as a group. They work at building trust. It takes time and effort, but through this they learn that what unites us is far greater than what divides us. And I see World Fellows as a microcosm of the world. And through cooperation and compromise, rather than competition and conflict, we can achieve better outcomes for all, and outcomes which are sustainable. Another initiative in my center is the Yale Climate Fellows program. And again, we advertise internationally and select 16 amazing people from the global south who are dedicated to addressing climate change. They are government officials, bankers, lawyers, journalists, techies, entrepreneurs. And they come and spend a week at Yale, a week in Paris, and a week at COP. And they have Zoom sessions in between on specific subjects related to the green energy transition and conservation. So it's with great pleasure to share this stage today with 3 Chinese environmental and climate champions: Jun Ma, a 2006 Yale World Fellow; Binbin Wang, a 2023 Yale World Fellow; and Zhouwei Diao, a 2024 Yale Climate Fellow. And to moderate this discussion, we have Yuval Ben David, who's my Chief Strategy Officer at the Yale International Leadership Center. He was my student a decade ago, and now he's the one who keeps me on time and tells me off when I'm doing the wrong thing. and is also the manager of our Climate Fellowship. And he himself has a background in environmental peace building. So thank you for coming, and please join me in welcoming the panelists.
So what a joy it is to be here today with three of our fellows. I think Carol gave a great introduction to all of you, so in the interest of time, maybe we'll dive right into the questions. And maybe just to start us off, I think it would be really interesting to hear about your journeys to working on this issue, and that aha moment that you had when you realized, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to work on environment, I want to work on climate. So maybe we'll start with you, Zhouwei.
Hello everyone, it's my great pleasure to be here today because I was here when the Yale's Beijing Center was open on first day. So it was a great pleasure to be back here and also to meet everybody here. So for myself, I am of School of Forestry, the Legacy School of Forestry student, graduated back in 2012, and my major was in environmental science. And during the past 12 years, what I have been doing is energy sector research analysis, especially focusing on China's gas industry and power industry. But after 5 years of research, I feel like I'm too far away from the actual industry. I feel like myself being a practitioner, more of a practitioner kind of person. So I decided to go really into the industry, and that's why I'm now at BP. And my new title, actually, just starting from today, is the general manager of Beijing's network of BP Pulse, which is a charging network for EV in China. I feel my personality is more like an analytical, more practical kind of person. But for environmental aspects, or for my past experience about environment, it's not, originally it was not my personal choice to get into this industry, because I was, what we call it, dispatched to the environmental engineering department when I was entering the university. But after a few years of study and also a few years of practitioners in the industry, I do feel like we have more and more severe issues, but also more and more opportunities in the industry. While myself could be, I think the aha moment for me is more like, it's not really when I entered into the industry, but more like a time when I went back hometown, because my hometown is in Jiangsu, have a lot of good food. I went there back every year for spring festivals, and there was one time, it was maybe 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, before 10 years, people all have their spring festival dinner back at home. But it was starting from 10 years ago when people started to eat the dinner, the big family dinner outside in restaurants. And at that moment, people didn't really have the idea or the opinion on saving or food saving, as Emma mentioned. So there was a moment when we finished the dinner, and basically 80% of the food on the table was left over. And I was asking one question to my family, saying, are we going to take away the food for the remaining days? And back then, it was really heartbreaking for me, because all of my family are saying, oh, we don't need this food, we will have new food tomorrow. So it was a moment when I feel like we do need a lot of education, especially from the ground to the population, to the people really that we communicate, we talk to every day, to let them know that we do have this issue. Because I've been educated for 10 years about all the challenges that we have been experienced, but even my families, even my parents, they don't care about it. So that's more of a time when I feel like, well, we probably need to do more work in terms of public educations, and to really get people to understand what's happening and what would be the impact. And that's really a turning point for me, to really starting from converting myself from doing just analysis research to go into the industry, to really try to either to provide more environmental friendly products or services to the population, or to be more closer to the end customers. So I hope that's my experience. But I feel like over the past 10 years, my family has changed quite a lot. And it's in a very positive way. They are not taking back all the remaining foods from every dinner they're taking outside. So I think in general we are seeing pretty good and positive changes in the society.
It's my turn. So as Carol introduced, I'm now working in Yale University. Before this program, I worked for Tsinghua University, and before I worked for Tsinghua University, I crossed a lot different stakeholders, and because I'm curious about the world, and I really want to, I care about the story of people. So at the very beginning, I work as a journalist, as same as Ma Jun, yeah. And then it's my own choice. I choose this job. But then during the Sichuan earthquake in 2008, I really went to go to the earthquake impact area and help the people. So I participated in international organization, development organization, Oxfam, and they sent me to the area, and thus I can stay with the people there and really help them to raise money from Hong Kong, from around the world, and to rebuild their home. And I feel so satisfied. But 1 year later, in 2009, my life changed. This time it's not myself, choose my fate. It's the fate choose me. Because I was told that, hey, there is a big conference in Copenhagen at the end of this year. It's about climate change. And since you are very good at write stories based on your background, and you care about people, so we decide to send you there. I say, what? What kind of topic? I really have no idea. Then my aha moment come. So the first aha moment is in the small village in Gansu, because I really want to know what's the climate impact in China. So I said, climate change is a new term for me. And then I visit a small village and I met a farmer there. And I asked him, hey, do you know climate change? And I have no expectation that he can really tell me something. But he said, yes. I said, oh. And what happened? He said, see, usually here is Gansu, usually 9 droughts in 10 years. But in these decades, more droughts come and no rains every year. And this March, there is no rains, but there is a snowball. So all my harvest disappeared, and I have no incomes. I said, oh, so there is a real climate impact in China. And then I take this picture, this story, and went to Copenhagen. And a big aha moment, visit me, because I never thought it's such an important global topic. There's so many people from different countries gather together to discuss how to address it. And they come from different industries, from government and from NGOs, from media, and they all care about it. And some from environmental perspective, some from developmental perspective, different perspective. I see why, and some from small island, and so many information came to my mind. And another very interesting point is I never thought that I work for an NGO. I have no idea about NGO in China. Not as much. I thought I work for an international organization. But at that moment, I realized that, oh, the term is NGO. I work for international NGO, and NGO is really so powerful and have a special role in this kind of global governance structure. I say, oh, it's such a super topic, and it's really related to the earth, to the nature, to people, and it can satisfy all my curiosity about the world. It can hold me. So this kind of a feeling, aha moment, support me to continue my journey in the field. How about you?
Thank you, Binbin. It's just so nice to be invited back to the Yale community, and as someone who truly benefited from that. This is the chance for me to say again, thank you, Yale, and thank for all your help and support. And I was exposed to some of the environmental issues earlier. That was nearly 30 years ago. When I worked for the media, got the chance to travel to different parts of China, and the water shortage, pollution, and destruction of the freshwater ecosystem really shocked me. And there was some aha moment. As someone who worked for the media, you got the chance to question those who are in charge, and still remember the chief engineer of the Yellow River Commission, when I asked about the river, dried up for more than 200 days. Not a single drop can enter into the sea. And asked him, but he said actually some of the hydrologists, his fellow hydrologists, would consider this as the maximum use of the resource. It's actually, to me, I kind of feel that maybe our whole philosophy, toward nature, this relationship between man and nature, there must be something quite wrong there. And so I put this into a book, China's Water Crisis, in 1999, and then motivated by the readers to look for solutions. And gradually, I joined an environmental consulting firm, and then tried to search for technical and policy solutions. And then I was very privileged to be selected as a World Fellow, 2004. And I was also lucky at that time. Dan must be the first director of the program. Dan Nasty, Professor Dan Nasty, he happened to be a professor of the Yale Law School, but also Forestry School. And so I took a course on environmental law and policy. And just in a classroom quite like this, and I sat there, and he talked about how in America the path toward solving the environmental problem. He said first, command and control. You push for the legislation, and then try to drive enforcement through the court. And then second way is market-based solutions like emission trading, and then the third one is about transparency, environmental transparency. And to me, I think, bingo, that actually we need to start from the opposite end, because we have an issue, at that time, an issue of such a magnitude and great complexities. It's not just hundreds of millions exposed to health hazards by all this air, water, and soil pollution. It's also behind that, it's almost like, not just very technical issue of low cost of violations or weak enforcement. It's behind that, it's the whole doctrine. I put GDP growth rate ahead of environmental protection, and then behind that is the philosophy. So we have to tackle those issues, and I trust that there's a need for an extensive public participation. We need all the stakeholders to come together to, because environment is fundamentally, it's for the people and for this whole, our whole planet home. But it's for the people, and the people can take action, and they will be they will suffer then from all this destruction, but they also benefit, and we need them to join the efforts. But people must be, prerequisite for that is access to information. So it reminded me of all these difficulties when I searched for, did my research of my book. It was so difficult to access any information about the environmental situation. And sometimes I have to go to the National Library to get the scattering data and information on some of the rivers and some of the pollution situation. So I trust that we need to start it from there. So that was an aha moment. And back from Yale, back to China, finally, I decided that NGO, maybe before that I got a bit hesitant because at that time NGO is, NGO or transparency, none of this are part of our DNA of this culture, so it was a bit considered to be quite sensitive. And but back 2006, it was a moment that I decided that, look, it's time to really, if we want to take that seriously, then let's build a database to compile all this data, and so we got started there 18 years ago. Thank you.
It's really inspiring personal stories, and I think what's also interesting hearing the three of them is how they reflect this enormous stride that we've made in environmental awareness here in China, I think in the whole world, and this also sort of environmental awareness to climate consciousness. And I think maybe my next question to Zhouwei. We're here in, Emma mentioned the beautiful skies in Beijing. Clearly China's made incredible strides on climate and environment in the past decades. And you're an analyst, as you mentioned, you're a very astute analyst of China's energy markets, of the green transition. Now you work really at the forefront of EV adoption. I think last year, half of the new solar and wind in the world was in China. And China is certainly the leader in terms of EV adoption and market penetration. So how do you explain that? I mean, what are the structural forces there? And what can the rest of the world learn from China's massive and very successful green push?
Yeah, just to add to your point, not only 50% of solar and wind was installed in China last year, but also about 50% of the EVs were sold in China. So when I started with the energy industry, it was 15 years ago when I started about solar industry, solar manufacturing industry in China. And that was a time when China's solar industry got into some troubles with overcapacity, with production limits, etc. But I think it's very similar for the solar and wind industry compared to what has happened over the past 10 years for the EV industry. The Chinese government has always been pretty practitioner and pragmatic in terms of developing the new energy industry. They know, well, the government and all the industry players, we know that this is the long-term trend to go. Either it's solar and wind, either it's EV. We are going to need them in 30 years or 20 years. It's just a matter of time. And in the future, we do need this resource. Either it's from the equipment or it's from the installations. So we know that there is this massive demand from the market, and basically goes back to the favorite two words from the analyst world, which is supply and demand. And because there will be demand, and the Chinese government think that we will provide supplies. And that is basically the original drive for the Chinese government to push for solar, wind, and EV development. Basically, it's, I would say maybe at the very beginning, it's more on the supply side compared to the demand side. We first look at, so this is a good industry that we can probably tap into because we have this massive production capability. And later on with that, we will be able to reduce the cost and making either solar, wind, or EV now cheaper so that people can accept it, either from the end users as, say, energy users or as individuals, consumers. So the more pragmatic way of the Chinese government has been trying to leverage our massive manufacturing capability to first drive for the cost reduction in those equipment, and at the same time providing incentives to the end users so that they can also, on the other hand, build the demand. For example, for starting from 2009 to 2015 and 2016, there has been great incentives on solar and wind installations, and nowadays we don't need that anymore because they are already grid parity. And for EV as well, for the past years, the Chinese government did have provided incentives to the producers and also to end users, for example, tax exemptions, to try to drive demand. So it's more like government policies on both ways, one on supply and one on demand, just try to build domestic market and also try to build up this industry from supply side. So that's a pretty pragmatic way. I would say we vision the long-term trend. There will be demand both in China and internationally, and we know there will be demand and we need supply. So that's more my feeling about how Chinese government and the country has been taking on this, and why China has been quite successful in those new energy industries.
I'm curious maybe to get your perspectives as well. If we were to sort of say the Harvard Business School case study or the Yale SOM case study, what would be the sort of the main takeaways, the bullet points in terms of lessons from China's transition?
Okay, let me take that first. Yeah, one of the I think one of the trick here is that of course it has a lot to do with some sort of vision from some visionary leaders like our former minister of technology, science and technology, and many years ago he started thinking that EV will be the future. So even before everyone, and most of the people think that as some sort of something to the far distant future, and he continued to push for that and make investment into the R&D. I think all those helps, but to China, this whole big policy shift, we can think about China. Maybe most people would take this as a top-down society. It's managed in a way that with this government have the absolute power. That's quite true. But on the other hand, when we look into the transition, particularly what happened during the past more than 10 years of time, we can see that the bottom-up approach, the public also played a bigger role actually than expected. Emma mentioned about first visit to Beijing in 2016. That was still a moment, when Beijing's air quality is still quite poor, and it was quite poor. But already, better than some 4 or 5 years ago, when we, at that time, 2011, for nearly 10 days, would not be able to see the building over there, and we would not be able to have the airplane land for a week, and so it was very, very serious smog. And I still remember that in January 2011, we made we all feel a bit surprised that the first amendment of ambient air quality standards, PM 2.5 was not there, and ozone was not there, because it was argued that it was too early for that by the professionals, by the officials. But during the smoggy period, we could see millions upon millions of citizens make their voice heard through social media, demanding for cleaner air and demanding also for the fact, for the data. And we have did our research with the Yale University a few years earlier and came up with air quality transparency index and identified, to the for all this, interest to protect people's health, and we need those parameters to be monitored and disclosed. And toward the end of that year, we're very happy to see then Vice Premier Li Keqiang made a decision in the State Council meeting that it was time to give people that data. And so in very short period of time, from 2013, 74 cities started measuring and disclose every hour. Before that, it's just daily average. And then 190, and then all the 338 cities across China in just 3 years of time, fully covered and monitored every hour. Of course, we know how serious it was. At that time, WHO standards was 10. And Beijing's, I still remember, the first monthly average was 130 or something. Of course, today it is 10. But 130, and it was serious. And of course, people know which day to put on face mask and lock their children indoor, but that's not enough. And we work with 25 other NGOs, launch a total transparency initiative calling for the emission source data to be disclosed also every hour, real time. To our surprise, the ministry made a bylaw to make that happen from 2014. Today, tens of thousands of them every hour or every 2 hours need to report their emission monitoring data to the public. And we launched the Blue Map app, helped to visualize that. Otherwise, people would not be able to interpret those technical data. But those who are not in compliance will turn red. From blue to turning red, and then the local users knows in their community who are the largest polluters, and they share that through social media, tagging the official account, social media account, filing the so-called VICO reporting. And tens of thousands have been filed at that time. And then we have the local environmental agencies approaching and saying that, look, we're going to follow this, but please, this is a kind of a way that public participation can happen based on data. It's better than a kind of wild way. We give them an excuse to open the door of those very powerful companies, power plants, iron, steel, and cement. So for the first time, they started respond to the public voice and public petition. And through the process, we can see some of them spent over $1 billion just to cut their emission. And through all these years, we can see that you mentioned about the last 10 years. It was quite dramatic. First, 2013, Beijing's PM 2.5, 89.5 micrograms annual average, and last year. The year before last year, 10 years later, it was 30, from nearly 90 to 30. Last year, some rebound, 32. And across the major regions, it declined by more than 50%. And through the process, actually, it has these so-called, create some sort of synergy with climate action. Of course, to tackle the environmental issue, thousands upon thousands of coal mines have to be shut down. All those 200,000 smaller, inefficient coal-fired boilers have to be suspended and shut down. So all this leads to a sudden stop of China's vast expansion of coal consumption. Before that, China's coal consumption tripled in just 11 years of time. But after that, it's actually got stabilized, and then in some years even did not. But in recent years, Binbin knows, and Zhouwei, I'm sure we all know, that last year we start seeing some rebound again. So because we're at a crossroad, it's very, very difficult. The pandemic first, and then post-pandemic, the turbulent energy market, and then the geopolitical tension. I'm the authority on that. And so all this put together push energy security to a unprecedented priority that fossil fuel have to be come back to that, and so that was unfortunate, and so we are now at the moment, as Zhouwei mentioned, that the #1 in the world on all these renewables. China is on our way to achieve our 2030 target set for wind and solar by the end of this year. 2030 target. But in the meantime, also we are seeing the coal again picked up. So this is the very dynamic situation. It's up to everyone. One of the reasons that it's more difficult on the climate side is people. We still lack the strong public opinion, public awareness, and public support to a stronger climate policy. I think that's why the work of Binbin and Zhouwei is so important, because we need to build that to the level equal to that of the perception of our understanding of our pollution and its impact. Thank you.
So yeah, I like your question because I just realized we three have different perspectives, from private sector, from NGO, and I think I work very closely with the Chinese government and from the academic perspective. So I had 2 points to take away. So the first one is for China government really take this issue, climate change, seriously. So it's the most different point compared with, I think, US and other countries. Why I have this kind of confidence to say this is that no doubt that at global level, climate change is our common crisis, and now there is also agreement that we need to face the green. We are experiencing the green transition, and renewable energy is the only choice we can pick up. And if we give up the fossil fuel, what else we can use? Of course, renewable energy is so great. So this is from international level. But why? If all the countries have this kind of awareness, then simply we should all put all our efforts to come together. But the reality is not so good. So why China is still there and put more and more efforts is because at domestic level, China also have its own goal. Like around 2030, China should reach its beautiful China dream, and then reach the eco-civilization. So China government release series of policy to make sure China can reach this, reach the goals and through its pathway. Then compare with the international opportunity to address climate change, you can see there is a synergy between the 2 levels, international and domestic. And this is why China governments realize that, it's not because of the international pressure I should do. It's because I have this kind of demands. I should do it. Otherwise, I may lose the chance to lead, or at least to participate this round of revolution. So this is, I think, take it seriously is very important. And this is also why, compared with US, I think it's kind of a strength of political system. As I observed in Yale, different country, different political system has their own strengths, like people. Different people no one are perfect. Yes, so we have our own strengths and also we have our weakness, but how to make good use of our strengths is very important. So on climate change, China is very good at making it strengths. Like mobilize, once the central government really take this policy, address climate change as its key policy, strategic policy, then around the whole country, for the general public, they are easy to hear about it. And so the awareness on climate change, I think for the Chinese people are not low, based on my survey. But the problem is, although the Chinese government take it seriously, how to help the general public, the multi-stakeholder really understand the importance and how to mobilize the people to take real action. So this is the point. And compare with US, you know, the election, and when Trump here, then White House announced, oh, we withdraw from the Paris Agreement. Then when Biden came back, oh, we take the lead on climate change. And then this year, maybe Trump come back again, and we have the expectation that US may announce to withdraw again. But that's fine. That's fine, okay? As I said, different countries have different problems. We should fix that. But the lucky thing is that all the strengths of US policy system is that they really have a democratic system. Even the White House announced to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. The civil society, the states, cities, universities, they are there. I still remember the slogan when Trump announced withdrawal from the Paris Agreement. For that COP, all the US people, the stakeholders, they participate in that COP, they create a slogan, remember that? We are still in. Yeah. So I will not feel feared if Trump come back again. I believe US people are still there, support us. And also the message from Emma's remarks is same. Yeah, no matter what kind of changes in the White House, we still have this kind of, US have this kind of strength. So this is from government's perspective. And the second point is multi-stakeholder cooperation is so important, and also for China. And I witnessed the transition. I write it down in my book. And in the previous decades, I witness and also participate China's roles transition on climate. And from different perspective, different multi-stakeholders perspective, like NGO. I still remember in 2009 when I was in Copenhagen, China government feel very excited. Oh, it's the first time they send a very big, around 100 people delegation there. And most of them are from different ministries, from the think tank belong to different ministries. And then some local NGOs also there, some Chinese media. And because I once worked with media, with NGOs, and I know how to communicate with the central government. So I said, well, it's great. China government can really pay such a lot of attention on this kind of global issues. But then, as I observed, Chinese government really don't know how to cooperate with the stakeholder at that moment. And the disaster then came, came that the Guardian said is China destroyed the Copenhagen deal. So since then, when I came back, I prepared, based on my experience, I prepare policy briefings, and also some peers like Ma Jun from NGOs. We work together and to lobby the government, hey, if you really want to play a positive role in this kind of global issues, you should open door to the civil society and open door to the multi-stakeholder. And I really witnessed China change. And this kind of lesson not only makes sense in China, of course it's so important to make sense in China, it makes sense around the world. And it's also why global climate change really can run much faster than biodiversity and other global crisis agendas. So this is 2 points on my side.
Thank you so much for that. And I think we're here at the Yale Center Beijing. I think one of the most important things we can do here is dispel misconceptions and complicate narratives of each other. And Ma Jun, as you pointed out, we have this narrative in the US that in China things are easy because it's all top down. And really, each of you in your own way is really a convener of collaborations of different communities and different stakeholders. So thank you for complicating that narrative. Let's talk about, perfect segue, the elephant in the room, the US-China relationship and climate's role in that. And I think there's two ways of reading this, right? One is that, I've heard this term a virtuous race, right? You can, a race to the top, the US and China can compete for delivering the most climate finance to the global south, for reaching breakthrough technologies, really being the best on climate. And the other read is that this issue is really at risk of being held hostage to tensions in the rest of the relationship. And I'm curious how you see this, how you read it, and really what the role of climate is in, I think, creating a more positive and stable relationship. So let's try to keep it brief, because this is the last question, then we'll open it up to questions from the audience.
Yeah. So, US and China are the two biggest countries. And only if they cooperate with each other and our human can really address climate change. Otherwise, we will disappear from this planet. And yeah, it's just the planet don't need human, because human need our Earth Mother. And with this kind of precondition, the only way for US and China is to cooperate, but not compete with each other. So, but why they compete so much? I think this is also the point we highlight so many times also in Emma's remarks, because the mindset, humans used to compete with each other, and there are so many misunderstandings, especially after the pandemic. So people-to-people connection is so important and help the two countries understand each other and to find some pathway to cooperate. And considering climate change is so important, and no matter the renewable energy or NGO, if they come together, of course, we can go ahead. And so I heard there is a thing that climate change is maybe the only one of the fourth, or maybe the last one, last topic between US and China. And so this is why it's so important. And I also heard that the new Yale president is a lady, and she is also the expert on climate. So I'm so encouraged to hear about that, and I really think U.S. and China, if they can come together and share the leadership to drive this bus for all the people to go ahead towards the net zero future, then we can really achieve it. And also we can avoid the conflicts, avoid the wars, and once we change the mindset, we really can welcome a paradigm shift for all humankind.
Thank you. Yeah, I fully agree with Binbin, and also Emma mentioned about how the U.S.-China China-U.S. collaboration have paved the way for the signing of the Paris Agreement and all the following up COPs. Without China-U.S. reaching agreement, it would be much challenging to try to agree on anything globally, because these two put together is 40% of the global GDP, and it's 40% of the emission. So we just simply, there's no escape. We have to collaborate. It's our joint responsibility, or responsibility of each of us, to try to lead and save our planet home. But on the other hand, today it was very difficult. We mentioned about the election. We're again in a very dynamic cycle, and God forbid, but there's no guarantee. Maybe something will go the other way, and So we need to have other tracks. And I know recently, China and U.S. Are having all these discussions on the regional level. California and with Chinese counterparts, still very, very active. I hope that's could be very helpful and help us to sustain that past 4 years. And another track is on our trade relationship. And all these years we've been working very closely with some of the leading American brands and corporations. At the beginning, maybe they did not quite have that awareness, but later on, when they understand, then they all turn to work together with NGOs like us and to try to bring the supply chain. This idea started, when I did my research. I worked for the consulting firm that more than 20 years ago, and at Yale, I still remember. Even the conversation I still remember vividly with the professors from the School of Management. But at that time, the response they gave is, look, the corporations, their main responsibility is to the shareholders, and it's all the others are not part of that, and most of them just follow this line of thought. But to me, I witness on the ground, this vast externalities. All this. They just buy from the cheapest offer, and then allowing all this dumping of the waste in our backyards, contaminating all this air, water, and soil, exposing local communities to some great risks and danger. And so when we try to engage with them at the beginning, they said, look, in China, sorry, I don't know who are polluting who are not, so I just buy from the cheapest. But I told them I have a map, happen to have some of the information there. And all these years, along with China's progress, historic progress in environmental enforcement, monitoring, and transparency, it allows an NGO like us to track the performance today on 16 million corporations operating in China. Locate them on the digital map, color code them based on their environmental performance, and this has become a unique resource. And those major American brands integrate that into their sourcing standards. And those past 4 years, when U.S. withdrew from Paris Agreement, they have made absolutely no change. They continue to focus on all these issues. Whoever's not in compliance, whoever's not try to measure, disclose, and they will be downgraded, and they will maybe even lose their contract. So this is very helpful. And I had this conversation. I have the chance to have a conversation with Ambassador Burns, and he's also very, very kind of agreed with that. This is a channel that Emma mentioned about the U.S. innovation and China manufacturing. Yeah, the U.S. used to place all these orders, American firms and brands, and then give orders, and we manufacturing. But today, gradually, China also gradually, gaining all this innovative power as well. So we are talking about two great powerhouse of innovation. On the reason for the whole world, throughout the whole world, that the solar panel, wind mill, and all this EV can drop. The cost can drop so significantly. Solar and wind dropped by nearly 90% in slightly more than 10 years of time. It's through the Chinese companies' innovative power. This is not the massive government spending. It's the entrepreneurship, the free market, which gives them the chance to really prosper. So I really think that all these are quite important. Last point is about people to people. People to people. There are all these wars cropping up and try to divide us. But when we engage, when we talk to each other, then we realize, it's not, we're more similar than different, and people to people. And the very good, great model is our special envoy and your special envoys, the two, Minister Xie and John Kerry. I think they are the great models that they can through all this difficult time, they can still talk to each other in a way that is so earnest, and because too, eventually are all passionate about this. Today is the Children's Day, and they care about the children. They want to leave a better world to the future generations. So I can sense that. I think if we can all go back to the more fundamental things like on that there's a still chance for us to collaborate. Thank you.
Just want to add Jun's point in terms of the collaborations and fundamentals. I think climate change is a long-term issue that all the people on this planet has to solve. And what has been sitting in between China and US is probably, from an environmentalist perspective, is kind of short term, like 5 to 10 years or even 20 years of economic battle because of cost of solar, cost of renewables, and also, for example, industries like EV manufacturing or auto manufacturing that might be losing battles in those fields. But basically, let's go back to the economic perspective of how to be more effective in achieving things, which is competitive advantage. If China is already having this competitive advantage in producing and providing those effective and low-cost supplies for people's use, especially for mass applications, not only in the domestic market and in the global market, in the longer term, the best way and the quickest way to achieve that target of being decarbonization or, say, higher penetration of either renewables or EVs or all those new energy technologies, probably just to leverage whatever has the cost effectiveness or the competitive advantage. And not to mention that for China, I think we do have a domestic market which is massive enough to accept the demand, to accept the supply. And also, as Jun mentioned, the market is very open and very competitive. It's not really supported that much by the Chinese policies. We can see leading Chinese EV players, they're all domestic and their major market is in China, and they're in huge price wars at this moment, targeting just the domestic market. So the Chinese local people has been educated and been cultivated into a habitat or say a sense where they would choose EV. Even myself, I just actually put down my order for a NIO car last month. So everybody is accepting the fact that EV is good, is of better quality maybe compared to an ICE car, and we don't have all those like range anxieties anymore. So that is really bottom-up demand, driving the industry to grow and driving the policies to change. And if we ignore the short-term impact on, for example, economies and all that, maybe short-term, 5 to 10 years of impact on specific industries, if we just look at longer term, 50 years, 100 years of really climate change issues globally, then the way to go is really to collaborate and especially utilize whatever we have at hand at most, which is the best that we can offer from different countries.